to Seekers of the Malediction, your source for tips, tricks, and strategy in our favorite miniatures card game. As ever, we are a competitive podcast, and our viewpoints are going to be focused through that lens. I am Zach, back in the saddle. This is Pat. What's our topic for today?
Yeah, so we're going to be kicking off the first of our deck reviews, trying something a little bit different here, hopefully give you some insight. I think no surprise to anyone, our first one is going to be Londriel,
We
since
have
we've been kind
saved the best for first.
of... Yes, absolutely. I've actually been fielding quite a few questions from people on the Discord, which is great. People that want to understand it, and then they take it and they want to run off with their own ideas. And I have a couple people have kind of made suggestions or given their insight into it. But hopefully, this will address a lot of the questions about how we view Londriel and what lens we're playing her through. I think all the dual set faction seekers are very diverse in terms of how you can build and play them. So we're going into it, and we'll really only be talking about the one way that Zach and I play her and how we kind of view her strengths. Um, so with that, I guess we'll kind of start off with what is the Londriel deck, and we kind of Zach, you helped come up with the name, right? As we were trying to name this deck, and you pitched the deck in homage to Magic the Gathering. Do you want to kind of tell what is that
Yeah,
name?
yeah.
And
I think Londril, first and foremost, is pretty classic control. And I think that she's pretty classic blue-white control. That is, she is incredibly grindy. She is constantly grinding for advantage, basically. It's a very similar idea to way, decades ago, blue-white control in Magic the Gathering, right? The idea that you are slowly grinding for value, for card advantage over the course of a game, and you out-resource your opponents. I mean, you essentially come to a point where it's not really turning the corner in sort of a, mid-range type jargon, but it is you reach a point where you have just ground your opponent down over the course of a game by doing, value after value after value play. And that is very much what Laundriel does. My joke in my notes here is, I really do think that this deck is incredibly potent at this point in the meta, and the joke is I think her biggest downfall is the clock. It is a slow, grindy matchup. It's a control deck. It's one that you are going to want to get some reps in if you take it to an event because it can run long. And we have taken it to an event, and we certainly didn't run out the clock in any of our games, but that said, you're going to want to know your tiebreakers. You're going to want to know how to keep an eye on the clock and play towards your tiebreakers because it is a slow, grindy advantage value machine, much like old classic blue-white Magic decks.
yeah, yeah, and to your point, I just want to say that like I actually have finally lost a game with it. And the game I lost we were already an hour in. We weren't playing with the clock, and it was actually against Spar. And I was just like killing. He was playing Morta. I was just killing his little stuff, and like I kind of like got to a point in the game where I was like, all right, if we were playing in an event, I'd be losing right now because he grabbed three relics and I grabbed one,
Mhm.
and like I only killed like I've killed like five mastery worth of stuff, and I could have just kept on killing, but like the game would have lasted another hour plus, right? So I went for like cheeky kind of like non-value plays to try to like I did manifested a relic and then I ran Londriel over there and TK'd her and try to steal a relic like to get even up and then like on mastery and then grind out from there. And like we were I think it was we were both like he was just playing the game as is. I was kind of putting in additional pressure on myself to play with an internal clock, right? And that's why I
Yep.
made that play. But because of I did that, he deployed a Sustanar into me, totally like unexpected, and then Laundry just died, and I lost the game right there, right? But like I could have very much just stayed where I was on my position, played the game for another 2 hours, and I'm very confident that I would have won from there. So in terms of
And I
what you're saying
think,
about value plays, I just want to say like Usually, if
Yeah.
you try to get cheeky and you try to do something like clever or something like that, you're actually I've been punished for it. And there's games where I haven't lost, but I came close to losing because I've made a cheeky like kind of gimmicky play.
Yeah. And maybe this is, as we right as we get into this sort of deck list and the nitty-gritty of the deck, it's important to note, I think outside of losing on tiebreakers, outside of being worried about a clock because you're playing the slow grindy list, the other sort of pitfall to this list is do not overextend. This list needs two, three, four, sometimes five, rarely turns to set up. You basically want your opponent to not come to you for two, three turns.
Hmm.
It lets you get set up in this death bubble bunker thing that is just incredibly potent. And if you overextend early game especially, but I guess late game as well as resources dwindle, and you go outside of these advantage value little grindy plays, your opponents can capitalize on it. And I think we'll get into it, later on when we talk about playing against Londriel. But again, playing towards the clock and knowing your tiebreakers is the way to beat her as
Yeah.
well. Staying up on advantage on the tiebreakers as you slowly try and, fend off this grindy deck is going to be a way to beat it too.
Yep.
So,
So let's transition over to the deck list now, so people can kind of start familiarizing. But before we hop into kind of going through individual cards and stuff like that, I just want to say the premise or the theory of this list is that your opponent cannot win the game, no matter how fast they come out, without grabbing all four relics or killing something. So as the Londriel player, as long as you are able to grab a single relic and not let anything die, which is the kind of the premise of her list, you cannot lose the game, right? The only other way that we mentioned is if there's a clock situation and the clock goes to time and you're behind on mastery, right? And that's the biggest thing that you have to play against. But other than that, the list is meant so that you just grab one relic and you never die and you eventually grind them out, as we kind of mentioned.
yep, yeah,
Um,
no, I think the early game for her is absolutely you grab one relic and all of your resources, your thought process, your card plays, everything for those first few turns are just staying alive because eventually your engine is going to catch up and I mean, it's very, very difficult, nigh impossible for some lists to actually crack her bubble.
yeah.
So
So let's really
that's the
quickly,
key.
since
Grab
since
one
we've
relic.
yep. So let's really quickly, since we haven't gone through them before, let's review Londriel and her legacy. So if you, I'll read it actually. So
Yeah.
Londriel
Yeah.
herself, 4 attack, 5-3 damage, 8 range, 6 speed, 14 defense, 16 health points, and then spell immunity. Whenever a spell would be affect her, this unit, it may ignore it. Riposte whenever a graze is scored against this unit, it may retaliate after the damage resolves. So I, not only is her cards and what she has access to and Conclave and Shattered Throne very good, but I think she is the best statted Seeker in the game, which is just like the extra cherry on top. Um,
Yeah, she's an interesting one because honestly, sort of from my view, and I think from a lot of people's view, she's fairly boring. I mean, she doesn't do incredibly tricksy plays like you can see with some of the Seekers. She doesn't have a ton of interaction. She just literally is very well statted, super high stats, spell immunity, which is absolutely bonkers in this game, and then riposte. So if you actually are throwing chaff at her in an attempt to whittle her down, it probably isn't working in your favor. I mean, she's going to be, farming you most likely with those
yep.
crazy stats. So yeah, she is just a really, really potent seeker because she is kind of vanilla and that sort of vanilla, you know, balancing factor has poured into her amazing stats.
Yeah, I think the extra cherry on top, which is just like it really enables. I mean, her defense 14 is the second highest in the game as of right now, and then the range 8 is just like, why does she need range 8? You know what I mean? Like it feels so
Yeah.
insulting because like it really is the enabler for her to be able to bunker up, and then you like unless you can outrange her, which not too much does, she can really just sit there and plink off like little dudes. So yeah, we'll transition to her legacy now. Arc of Lamentation, Warding Insight. Whenever a spell you play prevents, cancels, or redirects an effect, look at the top card of your deck, place it on the top or bottom of your deck. And then Arc's Vision is part two. Whenever you look at one or more cards from the top of your deck, you may reveal one of them. If it is a spell, draw that card. Otherwise, place it on the top of your deck and gain 2 Echo. Not readed in here is the asterisk that since Warding Insight, or rather, since Arc's Vision interrupts Warding Insight, after you reveal a non-spell and gain 2 Echo, you can actually put it on the bottom of your deck to replace it, which is a
Yep.
huge point of contention, but that is the official ruling, and it's what makes her card draw engine just fly, essentially.
Yeah, right. So yeah, a few rulings or things to note with her legacy. If it is a spell, you draw it. I mean, you
Yep.
have to draw it. That is just the way it works. And again, yeah, if it is a non-spell, you can choose to have it be on the top or bottom, and you will still gain that 2 echo. Um, Long story short, this legacy might be the best in terms of just pure card advantage, echo advantage engine. Once it gets going, you are drawing tons of cards. You are almost always just flush with echo, but it does take time and setup to get running. But once it's running, it goes.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
that's the sort of background of this deck is she just has this card advantage engine that keeps it going.
It it's what makes the deck so consistent. I feel like you can just have like I don't know if they're like the best hands are going to be obviously what gets her early game, which we'll talk about in just a second, right off the bat. But even then, like if you don't hit the early game, you can very easily dig and find it and get out of bad situations very quickly due to the arc and some of the spells that we'll go through in a little bit. The last thing I just wanted to, I threw in and I'm sorry for it's on the side here. I don't know how to redo it, but the terrain that we play her with is Starcast Halls. If you're looking at the deck, you're seeing 10 units and then 20 spells. And, I think a good majority of these, let me just do so one, two, three, uh, four, five, six, seven, looks like 10 spells are channel speed. So just getting the discount on those and pumping the advantage and gaining more resources is just the no brainer from this perspective.
Yeah,
So,
she doesn't need speed. Generally doesn't really care about line of sight blocking per se, and certainly doesn't want to sort of hand ambush opponents an advantage. Starcast Halls is just a we have a local who
shoot.
has been saying if you can't think of a reason to um purposefully choose one of the other terrain, uh, you should just always choose Starcast. The value is just almost always there.
Yeah.
It over the course of a game, it's a lot of savings.
Yeah. I think my rule of thumb is if I hit like 6, 7 channel spells, then it's going to be Sarcast Halls. Otherwise, I'll do Asterion Pathways. But yeah, this one
I
with
think
10
that's fair.
channels, it's definitely worth it. So we're going to transition into the early game now, which the name of the early game is just Ramp. And there's no better card in the whole game other than Valkyris Priest to ramp you. So it is a 4-drop unit. And the main thing here is it has Prey 3. But also it has heal 2, which can do some stuff for you for the late game. So Valkyris Priest, Praying 3, every activation they get, they'll gain up to 3 Echo. A lot of times if I have one of them, they're not moving first turn and I'm just gaining the 2 Echo. If it's just her and one other model like Londriel or something like that, I'll take the 2 over rather than getting her in board position. Just because you are often exhausting your hand to play units, and then mid activation or during the activation phase, they're giving you the echo that allows you to play the spells in your hand that are doing the prevention and stuff like that. So 3 Valkyris priests, and then 2 convokes, which are to really fetch out the Valkyris priests if you do not hit them turn 1. And this is also really great because it's just another spell in your discard, which we'll get to Renaissance Guard, but there's a thing to be said about getting cards in your spells in your discard, as well as just thinning your deck, right? Fetching things out to limit it so you can actually hit the big cards that you want middle to late game. Um, you want to talk about then the last one that I consider a really good early. I mean, it's just good overall, but it's really good. Like really can hit and churn through your deck really quickly. Is Rewrite Destiny. Zach, you want to talk
Yeah.
about this one?
Yeah, so I mean, really the theory of the Londriel deck in general is to get the engine going as quickly as possible, right? So that's the idea behind you really want to start with a priest, and those convokes really are sort of copy of priest number 4 and 5. Absolutely. And you want to get out of priest as soon as possible, turn 1 or 2. Obviously you're not going to get them every game, and those games are frankly tougher. Having a priest or two out early on is huge. And rewrite kind of operates somewhat in the same theory in that it is a way to dig through the deck early at the cost of 1 echo. Generally, you're often on Starcast when you're casting it, and it is going to build up sort of your hand, your card advantage, and get you the pieces that you need to get the engine churning early. It's a way to, I mean, if you are not choosing to reveal a spell card and draw it with the legacy off Rewrite Destiny, maybe I should interject. Rewrite Destiny triggers the legacy. And that's what makes it incredibly potent because you are either choosing to uh, bottom or top multiple cards and gain echo from whatever you've chosen to reveal from the cards from Rewrite Destiny, or you are drawing a card. What that amounts to is when you cast it on Starcast Halls, you are literally net gaining an echo if you decide not to draw a card, or you are drawing a card, fixing the deck for the cost of 1 echo. All said and done, it feels like sometimes it's not doing much, particularly early game where you're kind of just doing a setup thing. But the card is incredibly potent in this deck. And you know, we can speak to experience. When we first built this, we were kind of on it, kind of off of it. We weren't sure if it was really worth it. And over time, I think it's shown to be an incredibly potent
Yeah.
card in the
If
deck. I mean, I think it's a 3 of in Londriel, no matter what.
yeah,
The fact that it triggers the legacy, it is always a net gain in value or, resources or advantage is insane. The fact that it can, in later game, as your hand dwindles, as your resources dwindle, maybe you're not triggering the legacy as often for a variety of reasons. It's a way to basically kickstart the engine again
yeah,
mid to late game, and that's huge too. It's just such a good card in this deck,
yeah.
and a
If I,
very
if I can
important piece to the
interject
engine.
if I can
Yeah.
just inject, it's like you said that like we were kind of off on it in the beginning, and I'll just say we were off on it until like the first time we actually bothered to play it, right? Like on paper, you look at this and you're like, it doesn't, procs the legacy, sure, it could net gain you 1 if you're on set, but then like you play it and you're like I think it's just the fact that it's a virtual card draw 2 because you could bottom 2 cards, right, or
Mhm.
bottom 1 card draw a spell or something like that. Like it's just in a 30 card deck. I feel like you play this and you're like, wow, this it just goes so deep. And then like when you start chaining them and you go like draw one, like you bottom one, find another one, draw it, play, next activation, play like I've hit like 2 or 3 of these back to back, like off of each other. Given you have their channel speed, so you still have to like space them out over activations, but like you can go really deep in your deck with these, which is just so great. So yeah, do you have anything else to add to early game? Otherwise, we can transition to. Oh, sorry.
No, no, I mean, I think that that's the key to the early game. It's really just setting up the engine, and that's going to involve those convokes, those rewrites, and those priests as best as you can. I mean, that's sort of the ideal start generally, to get you into your mid to late game as, as quick as you can. You want
Yep.
to really get out of that early game phase and get into your, potent bubble of protection, as we'll get
Yep.
into.
Which is a great transition because, well, oh, sorry, I actually snuck this last one in here. Everyone always asks about like why do we have another Warden's Lancer? I think it is the answer is it is the early game piece. It's a component. I never want to play this thing. Like it's in there just because it has to be. But the reasons why we do have it in there, it's another hit for Convoke if you like don't need any more priests and you have a Convoke in hand and you just want to thin your deck to find more stuff. Which Convoke is also really good if you need to shuffle your deck. Like maybe you botted something like early, like a Gateway Guardian, because you wanted to find the priests, and then you want to shuffle to try to find it again. So there's that in there, and Warden's another hit on that. But it's also a little bit of speed, which can be good. And then the last thing is just like a cheap unit that can kind of stand alone on itself early game to give you more activations to play convokes and rewrites, right? So if you don't hit any priests or any other units that you don't want to play, but you do hit this because we're running only 10 units, which is very little. All right, so you play this and Londriel, so you have your float 5, and then you can like go on Starcast Hills. Maybe this can really kind of shoot out and run back and get an early relic. That's the reason why we play it. I've thought about maybe cutting this for like the Devourer or something like that, the Spellbound Devourer, which is in the sideboard. But I think I'm going to leave this in for the time being. Again, I think it's really there
I'm
just if you
I'm
have a
actually
bad draw.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty high on the one copy of Lancer in there, to smooth out the early game on particularly bad draws, especially if you've already mulliganed.
Hmm.
And the ability to have it in the deck just to ensure that Convoke is essentially never a dead card is actually pretty important.
Yeah. I mean, you can always bid with Convoke. Let's not get it like that. That's the one thing great about Malediction is there are never truly dead cards. But transitioning, we're going to go into protection and why this list really can just stay alive indefinitely. Zach, do you want to kind of lead us off?
Yeah, so I think one, protection is an incredibly potent ability, and I think that it's already very potent simply because the number after protection, so the number of times that you can protect, is per activation, right? Which means, of course, your large, powerful protection units are often protecting way more than that number indicates on their card throughout, the course of a round or the course of a game. Also, there is a particularly, I think, maybe more controversial now, even now than it was at the time, ruling that you can daisy chain protection. And what that means is you can take damage on one of your units, protect with a second unit, and then in turn protect again on the first protection unit. You can do this any number of times, which means when you have a bubble of overlapping protection units, you are able to spread damage incredibly thin across multiple units. What this means for the Londriel deck is where you have all of these counter spells, as we'll go into, and damage prevention things, you can very easily manipulate the damage that is being dealt to your team on the field so that essentially no one ever dies. You are constantly spreading damage over a number of units. And the fact that protection is per activation, the fact that protection can daisy chain, and the fact that various units, as we'll go into, have resistance as well, means you have almost complete control of where damage goes on the battlefield. And we know focus firing is very good in Malediction. We've brought it up a few times in some of our earlier videos. And the fact that you can more or less just cancel your opponent's ability to focus fire is very, very, very strong and essentially the key to why this whole control build works.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, you're only running 10 units, and the game usually starts where the your opponent is out number like out activating you 2-1 almost at times, or at the peak of it. But then as you start killing stuff and your stuff's still staying around, and you're playing one or maybe two units every turn, right? You very quickly like it starts to snowball, right? A snowballing effect where you just have this glob of essentially one hit pool, right? That can be like 60 plus HP that you're healing from. And then you're just picking off models that, oh, that model has 8 HP, it's dead, of your opponents. Whereas like they literally have to kill like 60, 70 hit points worth of models before anything starts dying, right? And then even then, like if they spike damage, say a crit goes through and they do like, I don't know, Thunder Steps like 11 damage, you're just like, cool, I'll chain it to, or I won't chain it, right? Because any protection damage goes back. But like you can just have that one unit die, and it's like, okay, you did all that work, and I'm just gonna let that one thing die, and then I still have a huge mass of units, right, and stuff. So Yeah, very
Yep.
strong
Yep.
distributing wounds. Well, obviously Gateway Guardian here on the screen, he's the king of it because protection 2, he has spell immunity, can't use any spells on him, no manifest or anything. And then resistance 1 is just every single attack. If they're glancing something and they glance for 1, you just protect it all the way to the Gateway Guardian, 0 damage, right? It's so strong. Herald Salvation, protection 3, in case they have a spell that you want to really eat. And then she's often a unit that wants to die because if they've done their job and they've
Yeah.
really pumped full of a bunch of damage and you spread it all out, well then you just kill her and then everything within 3 inches of her gains 5 health, which is just
I think, yeah, and I think that that's maybe a point to make. It is not an exaggeration to say that you could play this deck in an entire event and never once lose a unit for an entire event. It is very often the case when we play this build that we literally don't lose any units over the course of an entire game. That said, there is something to note here with the Herald of Salvation, where if you choose to let something die, whether you have to or not, she
mm-hmm,
is often the choice because of her Martyr's Blessing ability and the fact that then it's just a burst of healing, often across your whole bubble of protection that you were
yep,
already spreading damage on. Very,
yep,
very potent character. Obviously,
yeah,
that we know the Gateway Guardian is absolutely bonkers, but Harold has her place as well.
yep.
Um,
The
and
sorry
this, I
the
think this
Oh,
one,
go ahead.
yeah, I'll mention this one because I think this is a fun addition. For two reasons. One, it gives you some extra range, which I think is important coming out of the bubble, right? The ability to plink damage outside of your little bubble if your opponent's not coming to you. It it helps counteract often our instinct to overextend with control decks, right?
Mm-hmm,
When we're moving so slowly and it feels like we're not making a lot of progress, the fact that we have some units in here that can deal some damage out of our bubble and keep us from, following that instinct to overextend is really important. But of course, as mentioned with the Gateway Guardian, resistance is unbelievably good when you can constantly chain damage across multiple units and end on a unit with resistance, and cancel, very consistently just cancel one damage on every
yep,
attack.
yep. Their one downside is they only have protection 1, which is so you do have to they're often the link in the chain if you're trying to daisy chain multiple attacks to something, is trying to get through them or having multiple ways to go around this unit. But yeah, the resistance 1 and the range is just great. I do want to go back, that the Gateway Guardian and the Angel, they're 5/3 damage profiles, right? So like obviously they're the ones that are wanting to be up in people's business and kind of your front line because they have the most output, which is often a thing you have to keep in mind is like, hey, yeah, you can take damage for days and stuff, but you do have to kill stuff, which is kind of something that's always in my mind of like, all right, how am I actually going to get attacks and stuff while keeping this bubble? So putting these guys in front and then having line of sight for the shield mages that want to be in the back to shoot through is often very critical. And we'll kind of touch on positioning here in a little bit. Um, the True Stone Exemplar, these guys, shield wall, so everything within one of them gets +1. Ironclad is great if they do need to kind of like be an anchor, but protection 2 with 16 wounds. I kind of just refer to these guys
Yeah.
as blood bags from Mad
Yep.
Max, where you just park them at the very back, and if they get to make an attack on something, great. Otherwise, their job is literally just 16 extra hit points for the rest of your bubble. They're not really doing too much outside of that.
As we wrap with creatures or with units as well, I just want to note that chip damage is real with this. So you are playing a value game. You are playing a slow, grindy card advantage game. It is okay to consistently put out chip damage as you slowly wear out your opponent's
Yep,
resources. Your chip damage will add up. Yes, focus firing is incredibly good in Malediction and is often sort of the focus point for a lot of decks. Chip damage is okay
yep,
with this deck. I mean, certainly, focus your efforts. Don't let them spread damage simply because you're spreading your attacks. But, that's it's okay to just
yeah,
toss out a little bit here and there with this deck.
yeah.
It'll slowly add up.
I'll add that usually I'm not a control player. I do not like playing that, but one of the things about control in this game, or at least with this list, is you just do not care about your dice rolls at all. You're just like rolling
Yeah,
dice and you're like, I don't care. I'm doing damage. Like I'm, like that's all the goal. And
yeah.
so you're like, I don't need to actually
Yeah.
kill this model this turn. I could kill it next turn,
Does the D20 system frustrate you? Play
Yeah.
Londriel.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why like you hear so many people like I rolled a one, and it's like yeah, ones are frustrated, but it's like whatever, I'll just kill it next turn, or eventually.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that wraps up the units, and we'll kind of transition now into the wave two of protection and really the control. Like right, these are the spells of how you control the game. Um, and there's no other better card than Renaissance Resonant Guard. I swear to God, I am not trying to do this whenever I just butcher this name for whatever reason. But yeah, we've talked about this card. It just prevents
Yep.
up to X damage, from a single source, and then you gain that much echo equal to the number of cards you discard. This is why you're running 20 spells. The rewrites, the convokes, the all the other prevention spells. So like typically you want to end on this spell, right? Like this is one of the last prevention spells you want to play. But that being said, sometimes you just need to proc your legacy and do not like if you're preventing 3 damage and this card is just paying for itself and you need to like find units, like especially like the one thing I'm usually digging for in this game is like your protection units, right? Like you got one or two, but you
Mhm.
need more, right? And so, like, if you just need a dig that, don't hold this in hand waiting for that turn, you can get 7 echo off of it, right? Just like fire it off, proc your legacy, draw a card, or reveal the unit that you've been looking for, keep it on top, and set yourself up for late game. Um, yeah, this is this spell is just ridiculous. I think I don't have
Agreed.
much
Yeah.
much more to say on it.
No, there
Um,
isn't much more to say. I mean,
I,
really, I think we can kind of even do some groupings here, right? I mean,
yep,
Resonant Guard, our shield spell that's up now, our
yep,
Ward of Vulcaris, like they're super key, obviously, to how the deck plays simply because it procs the legacy. It allows you to very specifically prevent damage when you need to. Remember, you know, you have all of these protection units that are already spreading damage. This can
yep,
even, I mean, these cards can add insult to injury. Not only do they proc the legacy, but you can, run your damage through a daisy chain that puts it on a resist unit, and then you also get to prevent it. I mean,
yep,
you can save these cards to only prevent the damage when you need to after you've already abused sort of the protection chain that you have on the field outside of needing to proc the legacy as you've
yeah.
said. um
I will say that most times I'm just trying to weave these in to get full value, right? If they hit me for 5 and I have the echo to play this, and I like it, I'm still set up to play whatever I want to play next turn. That's when you fire these off to start procking your legacy, right? And like so, let's say like I have a shield mage in hand. I have you know 5 echo. Next turn, I'm going to get enough echo to play, my shield mage, but then I also have enough standing echo to play this. Great. I'm going to fire this off, get my full 5 damage prevented, and then start procking my legacy, right? And that should be kind of all the prevention spells, in my opinion. Um,
yeah.
the coin, other than the prevention for damage, there's also all the counter spells, right? And there's no one that counters better than Londriel just because she has access to 5 of them, Runefold Ward, Reversions, and then Neutralizing Ward. But she's better than everyone else because Reversion hits Swifts, right? And so this is why, like, typically, especially in like either mirror matches or against Polynor or any other caster that has access to Swifts or counter spells,
Yeah.
I've done a number of times now where I play a spell and I'm holding my reversion so I can counter their counter, right? And I've even gone one further, and there's been a game where I've countered their counter and then another counter on top of that. So like the fact that you have access to these and being able to cancel Swiss is just huge in this matchup, I
Yep.
think.
Absolutely, and they proc the legacy, which is great.
Yep.
I think counters are a place where you can swap in and out sideboard cards as needed, depending on your
Yep.
matchups. So note that. I'd also just say note the wording on your counter spells, particularly if you are a newer player. Note which ones only cancel channels, which ones cancel swifts, and note that reversion doesn't allow them to replay the spell in that activation.
Yep.
It basically counters the spell for that activation. Yes, it goes back to their hand. They can play it in a later activation, but they
Hmm.
can't replay it in that same activation. So make sure you know your wording on your
Yep.
counter spells and what their roles are.
Yep. The last bit is just kind of their utility spells, right? And we talk about how like good to manifest is as a card, but like I never feel like Londriel needs to manifest. It's just like another cherry on
Yeah,
top, you know.
yeah,
Like you hit it and you're like, I will try to fit in because it's 6 echo, which is quite a bit, and I'd rather play a unit that like with protection. But it's like the value plays for me for to manifest are because I've been thinking about this a lot based on my recent loss with her is if you know the time, you can pair this up to hit it to manifest on a relic and then hopefully edge out the echo balance, right? So this is a big thing if you know a game is going to go to a time. Otherwise, just like removing damage off the board, right? Like, hey, they have a thing there. I don't care how much it costs, if it costs 5, 6, or if it's a 9 cost unit or whatever. If it's doing 5 damage or has a relic that is causing it to do more damage, just fire it off to get the damage off the board. Sure, they can replay it. I don't care, but like that's often enough is just removing damage off the board is kind of the key. Uh,
yeah, yeah. Know your tempo plays, know your
yep,
advantage plays with the manifest.
yep. Duplicate, great in this list. It literally can hit pretty much anything other than the Gateway Guardian Herald Salvation. When you hit it on one of your protection units, great. I love playing this on even a priest because you're often playing it for 4 with star cost halls, which is exactly what the priest costs. It's drawing the priest out of your deck and then playing it that turn, and then that priest can go and just immediately pray right away, right? So duplicate
Yep.
on a priest is great. Rites of Healing, this is often kind of like seals the game where like a opponent like thinks they're finally whittling you down to like killing something, and then like you heal the Gateway Guardian 10 health or something like that, and then they're like, well, crap.
Yeah.
We
Yep.
so yeah, just and
Perfect
then
advantage.
I think the last one is just telekinesis, which I kind of consider a control spell as well because you can get things
Oh
out of
yeah. Oh yeah.
position. You can, you're bricking up and you're kind of creating choke points and stuff. So if you can telekinesis something into you, then like and that's the only thing they can engage. You put in a position like they're stuck. They can't get more into the brick right to make attacks. So positioning really big, and this any spell that allows you to touch your opponent's models is just
Yeah.
great.
An incredible utility spell for this deck for
Yeah.
sure.
We'll just go through the sideboard really quick. I will say the sideboard is completely wide open. This is just our shot at it. And really, it was, I think Zach and I, before going into our tournament, we decided we were both playing Londriel. We thought about what the mirror match would look like. And so we literally just put in a bunch of spells that we thought might be good for the mirror match. Spellbound
Yeah.
Devourer lets you hit harder, crack, the Londriel brick. Spellbound Gargoyles, maybe we could steal an Illy Relic. I don't know if any of these were actually coming in. Ambulis to maybe steal a relic. This is the one that I do put in against Polynor. I think Polynor has a good game against Londriel in terms of early aggression and being able to outrange and threat you. Shifting Winds is great. It also procs your legacy, so I'm usually putting these in. I'm usually cutting like a 1 TK and maybe like a 1 counter, like or something like that. I often found that countering Polynor, he like wants to play a lot of low cost spells like Twin Flames or Last Stride and stuff like that, and I just don't care to counter those stuff. So I'll usually take out a counter against him. Same thing with the reinforced plate. I have put it in Polynor. I don't know, kind of in between. It is really good if you can put it on like Londriel, and then it gets +4 defense against Polynor. But I don't know, completely wide open. The last thing I kind of just wanted to breeze through here are just key relics. I think when I go in, I think my number one priority, and it's kind of this one is definitely the S tier for her. She loves this, and I might pick this over anything, but I think more important is just counter picking your opponent. Like if they're playing Polynor, not letting them get Fail Piercer, or if they're playing like I don't know some like Thundersteps or something, not letting them get Reaper is more important than getting really good relics on Londriel. So just taking those away from people. But that said, this gives protection infinity, right? There's no a number after this, so it allows you to protect against any model within 3 inches, and then it's also healing everything within 3 inches for 2, which could get really ridiculous as you're spacing things out. I think this is by far the best relic for her, and it usually wants to be on her so that she can kind of distribute the damage wherever she wants. It can even be like if you attacked her, like not her, she can take it, but then other protection units are taking her, so she can chain it to where it needs to be. Like this is like the ultimate penultimate. I feel like relic for her.
Yeah, no, I think that that's a good thing to note. Relic strategy, first and foremost, is probably counterpicking relics and making sure that your opponent is not setting up very favorable combos for themselves in their own deck. And from there, it really is some of these defensive relics that, other decks are not really that interested in because they are more aggro or sort of a, you know, tempo aggro leaning focus. And Aegis, Martyr's Vexilium. I mean, a bunch of these defensive relics that a lot of decks
Yes.
don't want are incredibly good in Londriel because that plays directly into her play style and what she is trying to do in terms of outlasting and out advantaging the opponent. I see you put up Boots of Celerity.
Yes.
Boots is incredible for every single deck in this game. It
Yeah.
is a very, very potent relic. And you should probably always just grab it.
Yeah, the one thing about boots is I want to is since you are dug in, and sometimes you do need to shoot. It is often really good on Londriel because whatever engages her and the brick, she can still shoot out past and not care about proc and retaliation. But also there are matchups where the after you get set up, and maybe they're outranging you with Palinor or something like that, you do need to come into them. Boots is a great way to keep on having your offensive output while still moving up and trying to chase them down essentially because you don't want to overextend as we talked about and like double run and just leave yourself out there. So like one move, double shoot, or you know what I mean, and then let your brick kind of come up to you is
Yeah.
often good enough. Yeah, as you mentioned, everlasting heart +5 health with regen 3 is often really great on a unit for protection. I'll put this on a shield mage in the back or something like that just to regen you and give them a larger hit pool. And then same with Guardian Aegis, just another source of resistance one. Plus the shield wall is often great as well. Um,
Yeah.
all right, so let's hop into TTS now, and we'll mess around with some of the terrain and husk placement, and then go over some positioning, just to kind of wrap things up. So here I just kind of grabbed some terrain to place against, but we have as we mentioned, the Shattered Hull terrain. And I guess we'll just start with, as the Londriel player, what you're trying to do with your terrain. So what I'm almost always trying to do is position the terrain so that you can cover all three or all the deployment zones, right? And always benefit from the +1. So usually you're always deploying in some kind of triangle formation, like this. So you'll put your first one there, second one will go here, and third one will go there. That way, no matter what deployment zone you actually end up getting, you're always within walking distance or double move to hopefully grab a relic that is by one of these, as well as benefit from the terrain. Um, Now, that's not always going to be the case, and sometimes I'll have opponents block terrain, so like they'll just cut off one completely. If that's the case, you can kind of just reorient it, and I've actually placed this one here to kind of counteract it, right? So like if they've gone and they've completely denied, you know, a corner with one of them, I'll just kind of split them then and to say, okay, I'm going to grab these two then, or these two, and then you can kind of like rearrange the triangle as it makes sense. Um, the other thing that you're trying to do is kind of create as much distance as possible in terms of um, choking up the middle and making it more difficult for them to navigate a direct path through. So that just, I guess after the triangle, it really is about looking at the obscuring terrain or the red placement, like all where all the red is, and really just kind of creating choke points. So with that being said, like if this is my initial one, and I'll just throw out some random stuff here. So at this point, I'm trying to create choke points. And like if I'm placing this one off of it, I'm trying to get it so that I can put just 3 inches between these two. And if I obviously do it like this, right, that obviously isn't creating a choke point because it's measuring to the tip of this terrain, but you can walk over it, right? So that's where I'm really looking at the red pieces to try to match it up with other red pieces to create these narrow choke points. If they're here, putting, or if this isn't here, putting another one here-ish and really pairing it up with like kind of this pillar here. Do you have anything kind of to add, Zach, of what you're looking for as a Londriel player?
No, I think that that's a pretty good summary or sort of a, base heuristic for placing terrain with Londriel. I think, it's just a good reminder to measure out your terrain, be aware of what base sizes can fit through various windows or lanes on your terrain. Starcast Hall has some um, strange narrow pathways, particularly on the large piece of terrain
Yes.
for large bases, and that can be problematic. And if you're not aware of it or understanding its placement early on, you can create choke points for yourself,
Yep.
which is really not ideal. But once you're aware of them and understand how to place them, they can be very beneficial for stopping a Thunder Steps charge or something like that.
Yeah,
So.
the big one here is obviously a large base model like Thundercept or your Gateway Guardian can't go here or here. So really the only way to traverse through Starcast Halls is this corridor. And that's a big one. You actually hit on something else I like to do, especially with this terrain for whatever reason, because it's usually so. Just to let you know, you can flip terrain, and I usually like to flip this one more than any other one because I want the the edge that comes in a little bit more blocking to be outward facing, right? So that if I get this one,
Yeah.
I can create a nice choke point here. And if it's like this, obviously that's harder to do, right? It's more open where this is more closed. You can only do this with the 2D terrain. But the other thing is I do like to actually butt these up against the edge of the board here. And if things get dicey and I'm like playing like I'm not I've got a slow hand or something like that, they got on me quick, and I need to fall back with like a relic holder to not lose the game, it is really nice to put something here and then have the option to shift through and kind of like kite out like that. So I do find myself with this one as well as possibly, with this one, I'm usually placing it like this if I can, doing that same thing where even a small base can't get through here, but you can do plays like shifting, which is kind of sometimes helpful. Uh, I'll just kind of mention against counterplay against the Londriel player. Um, if you are playing Londriel, I find placing your things more central is important. So like your big piece of terrain, I think I would almost always put it dead center um, to always kind of benefit from it and kind of mess up
Yeah.
the Londriel's placement, as well as even just keeping your things more centralized rather than towards the edges, because that's really where Landra wants to play her game. So if you're putting things more on the edges, you're just giving her more terrain to play with and more bottlenecks, right? Because she's really wanting to play the edges of the board and then funnel everything into like a choke point. So if you're playing against her, put your stuff as centrally as possible. Try to open up the board as much as possible. So like if you're placing terrain and you're placing it like against this, obviously don't don't put your end so that you make a choke point there. Leave it more like this so it's open and you have a bigger gap. Put it at, maybe not exactly at 3 inches away. Put it at 4 or 5, however you can fit it in, just to keep kind of wider lanes and not give them those nice choke
Yeah.
points that they want.
That's what I was gonna interject with was centralize your terrain placement, but keep your lanes open. Really focus on open lanes. And I think when we get to husk placement here, there's some other um, thoughts on that front in terms of centralized placement of husks.
Yes.
So I would say, well, you can begin, I suppose, with Londriel's preferred husk placements.
Yeah. So my number one, I think, is almost always I am, these should be straddling two deployment zones, the big one at all costs, even if it has to be north and south. And you're almost always putting one in the middle of both these deployment zones because this is my favorite piece of terrain to force engagements. They're just, like I said, there's the two natural choke points in it itself, here and here, as well as even like these corridors are really, it's just kind of full of choke points. So I am almost always putting one there, hoping that I can direct the engagement here around some point. Do you have other thoughts, I guess, Zach, or what are your for Landrill?
No, I think when it comes to Londriel husk placement, there's sort of a fine line or a balance between um, spreading your husks in order to Give yourself extra time as others are delayed in either going out to grab a husk or even having to stay back near their deployment zone in
Yes.
order to retain a husk. And those extra turns are really beneficial to you setting up your engine and keeping Londriel, getting to your mid to late game by the time engagement actually happens. And I think that that's true. At the same time, you want to ensure that you aren't totally uh, unbalancing or I
Yes.
don't know what, destabilizing the board in favor of your opponent. Because when you're playing a slow, grindy control deck like this deck, you do need to keep aware of clocks and tiebreakers and things, and you don't want to so favorably put one point of the board where your opponent is at that they are so far ahead in points, you're struggling to turn that corner to come back to,
Yeah.
um, the game ends before you're able to fully take control.
Yeah, I think to kind of your point, as Landro, you have two objectives. Number one, I think, is balance the board. If you can get out of the deployment with an equal size board and you can grab two early easy husks, you've already won, right? As the Landro
Yeah,
player.
it's huge.
Um, but then number two is you're trying to create as much distance as possible. Like if this was a board state for Landrill, she would love it because the time it takes for, regardless of what corner your opponent gets, they're gonna have to go to grab these relics, and then it's going to take them at least another turn or two to get to where you're at, right? So you're trying to actually place things, and as an opponent, I would actually argue you're trying to get things as close as possible because what you're trying to do is you want to get to Londra as quickly as possible, so you want to pick up your relics on the way to
That's
confronting
exactly
Londra.
the point that I was, yeah, referring to earlier. Is It's exactly right. I think when you're playing against Londrio, you want to be able to basically drive by, grab relics as you rush at her in those early turns.
Yeah,
You want to get ahead on relics while also engaging as early as possible.
yeah. So I'm just actually making a so really quickly as we wrap up on like placement. As I mentioned, you're trying to just create a wedge here, right? And if this is my placement, like maybe Londriel goes here, right? And then you have access to Gateway Guardian or this Herald of Salvation, right? But you're trying to block them on, and you want your heavy hitters in the front, right? And then as you're kind of deploying, you're gonna be putting your shield mages within 1 inch of everyone, right? And ideally, this Gateway Guardian is within 1 inch of Londriel as well. So maybe they need to get a little bit closer. But this is kind of how you're deploying. And then the Shield Mage, it has line of sight that it can shoot maybe through here or through there, right? The gaps. Maybe he wants to go like a little bit closer to get through this gap and shoot here, so that you can clear off your own models. But this is really the placement. And then as your priests are going, they're kind of, you want them back here. They don't even need to be in the bubble. But if you do feel like aggression on one side that they're wrapping around, then you can move them in. Even though the priests don't have protection, they kind of do because your opponent is really it's really advantageous for them to attack the priest. So if your priests are getting attacked, it's almost a good thing, because that's just more hit points that you're adding to the protection bubble, right? They can take a hit or two, and if you're losing a model, like we kind of mentioned, priests are great in the early game, but as the late game, they kind of fall off. Yes, they can heal too. To whatever, and they can get in chip damage with their range 6 gun, so they'll do work. But you much rather lose them than something bigger and more impactful. All right. So yeah, I think this is a pretty good depiction here. If you're the opponent here, maybe you can slide a small base model here, right, against them. In which case you can just like gum up with like another protection unit. But if you're Thunder Steps here, right, and you're coming into this, you can see how just one Thunder Steps, maybe even like a small base, you're only able to get two, maybe three models engage with any single model in this brick as you kind of wall off, right? And that's kind of exactly what you're trying to do. Um, I will say that
Yeah.
although we say that you're trying to engage Londrill as quickly as possible, I think we need to caveat that it's as quickly as reasonably possible. I see a lot of new players take Thunder Steps and then just charge it in, attack the brick, and oh, he died. And then the rest of your army like was picking up relics or something like that, and it's like way back here while Thunder Steps is engaged. You really do need to wait the one. You're trying to get there as quickly as possible, but you need to wait the one turn to kind of group all your things up and attack it all at once because you want to apply. and saturate the wall as much as possible. You don't want to just charge things in one after another. Otherwise, Londriel is just going to kind of pick things off as they come in. So yeah, I think that pretty much summarizes everything I wanted to mention on Londriel. Do you have any kind of final thoughts, Zach?
No, no, I think maybe we can expand in future deck checks on beating this deck
Mm-hmm.
in terms of target priority and things like that. Um, but this is essentially the rundown of how to play Londriel's the deck.
Yeah, yeah. So if you like this content and want to see similar content, please, click the buttons, like, subscribe, comment. We'd love any engagement as possible. And with that, I think that's going to do that for this deck review. And until next time, have a good one.